Let me ask you, are machines taking over the world? Are we in the midst of losing our jobs to robots? Does the automation movement render our skills irrelevant or even obsolete? If the answer is yes, how are we, professionals in the marketplace, handling that evolution right now? And what can we do about it moving forward? Let's take a step back and reflect on some familiar visions of humans working with machines. Take heart surgery, for example. Much of what the Mayo Clinic doctors used to do by hand, by opening up your chest, it's now performed with minimally invasive precision using robotic technology and mechanical hands. Federal Express, they used to manage package distribution with hand trucks, basic conveyor belts, and forklift operators. Now, many warehouses have been converted into digital logistics centers, fully automating the supply chain process without people. And what about information? It used to be that when we had a question, let's say, who fought in the War of 1812, we had to look it up in an encyclopedia. Or better yet, we would ask the librarian for a resource. Nowadays, we just ask the question out loud. Hey, Alexa, who won the War of 1812? And boom, we have what we need. AI knows everything. Transportation provides another example. It used to be that you step out onto the street, you'd raise your right hand, and you'd hail a cab. Now, thanks to rideshare companies like Lyft, with just a few touches on your phone, you can summon a car, you can pay for your ride, you can track the driver's movements in real time while you're waiting for them, or you could even map the route you'll be taking once you start. And finally, remember the classic image of the chaos on the New York Stock Exchange trading floor? People yelling, papers flying. Today, the reality is that most stock traders actually carry out their work individually from their desk, using high-powered computers that quietly monitor markets and process transactions. McKinsey estimates that by the year 2030, about half of all work activities will be automated, half. So a lot of jobs will be displaced. They project that anywhere between 75 and 375 million workers around the globe will need to switch to occupations in the next 10 years. Here in the US, that means up to 32% of future workers will need to find new lines of employment, a case of job displacement instigated by automation. Another study, a research partnership between Cornell University and the Aspen Institute, reports that today between 25 and 30% of US workers participate in the gig economy in some way. In other words, 1 in 10 workers rely solely on contract work for their primary income. Some do it willingly because they value flexible work arrangements, but most do it out of necessity because they are now unable to secure regular full-time jobs. A third study by the Society for Human Resource Management, they document a skills gap between available jobs and workers with the skills to fill them. In the US, people are having trouble finding the right jobs, and employers are having trouble finding the right workers. 75% of those having difficulty recruiting talent attribute this to a skills shortage. And these shortages are found at all levels, from the trades, to middle-skilled jobs, to high-skilled STEM jobs. So again, the data shows that many of our fears about automation are justified. That means that all of you will be facing real challenges in the new frontier of work. Given the evidence of job shifts and skill gaps, what do you think people are doing to survive in organizations around the world? How are they adapting? To better understand what's happening, we can model the old frontier of the Wild West expansion of the United States. It provides a metaphor for the adaptation strategies in this new frontier of the future of work. So first, we have the settlers. In the old Wild West, settlers established roots by building homes and eventually establishing stable communities. In the new world of work, settlers likewise aim to stay where they are in their jobs. So, their objective is to not fall behind as the knowledge and skills required in the fields evolve. Reskilling keeps them up to date on advancements so they can meet the expanding demands of their fields and maintain their current level of employment. According to the Pew Research Center, 87% of workers perceive value in training and skill development for their careers. And 45% report that they got training within the past 12 months. As they look around them, people see that coworkers who proactively learn new skills have a career advantage compared to those who don't. And so they make a strategic choice to leverage education to help them secure their jobs. Companies are also beginning to recognize the critical importance of retraining their current workers as a strategy for remaining competitive. Accenture, for example, now invests about $1 billion each year in training. Since 2015, the company has reskilled almost 300,000 workers, which is 64% of their global workforce. Another example is AT&T. AT&T is 35 years old, and they're built on the old technology of landline telephones. As their core business moves from hardware to the cloud, the skills they need are really changing. To address this massive skills gap, AT&T proactively developed an interesting new program. Instead of offering training like Accenture, their program helps their employees identify the future skills that are required to be successful at AT&T. And they leave it up to the employees to figure it out on their own, just how to reskill. So both the settlers themselves and their employers are invested in the reskilling process. Either way, the settlers are adapting and staying put. Prospectors, on the other hand, they actually move from one setting to another to find their work. In the Wild West, they famously moved from place to place in search of gold. In the new world of work, the term prospectors aptly describes today's gig worker, one who moves from one short-term job to the next. In lower skilled occupation, there's been a long time existence of on-demand labor, temporary employees, and contingent workers. However, in the higher skilled fields, there are growing numbers of professionals who are now foregoing their traditional full-time jobs, where the value of their skills is starting to erode, and they're turning towards consulting and other freelance arrangements. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 44% of contingent workers have a bachelor's degree or higher, and nearly 40% work in management. So clearly, gig work is no longer limited to a small segment of workers who are just getting by on short-term jobs. Today's gig workers include a mix. There are those with both low skills and professional expertise, and there's opportunities for those with no credentials, but then also highly educated specialists. Evidence of the popularity of gig work is found in the recent surge in companies that cater to the needs of freelance workers. Companies like Upwork, they connect freelance professionals to job opportunities. And Freelancers Union, they provide gig workers with training and professional development resources. So prospectors are constantly scouting for work opportunities in whatever form they come and following work wherever they can find it. Next, we have outlaws. Now, we all know outlaws operate outside the law, and they act by their own set of rules. In the old Wild West, outlaws ventured beyond the conventions of established society to aggressively seek opportunities for both riches and local dominance. In the new world of work, outlaws adapt to changing conditions by setting off in their own direction, to start their own companies or to innovate and create something new. They launch new products, they launch new processes, or perhaps new marketing innovations to reach customers in new ways or create new opportunities. Outlaws adapt to the future by keeping their careers and their companies relevant by generating their own opportunities rather than staying in one place like settlers or chasing work like the prospectors. The Census Bureau reports that 414,000 startup firms were created in 2015. That illustrates just how many people pursue the path of creating their own companies versus seeking work with an existing employer. This ethos of expanding beyond the confines of the establishment is really evident among entrepreneurs, inventors, innovators, and certainly disruptors. Silicon Valley has a long history of producing innovative technologies that build on what came before and launching it into new directions. Companies like Apple, Atari, Genentech, Tesla, Twitter, and a whole generation of companies that have promoted the sharing economy. Kickstarter is an example of a company that eliminated the need for entrepreneurs to seek funding from banks or other traditional investors. Instead, the platform allows them to bring their ideas directly to the public, who in turn give money directly to the ideas that they like. Airbnb is another example. They developed technology that easily allows anyone to rent homes on a short-term basis, directly competing with the traditional hotel industry. So outlaws are forging their own paths by inventing something unique. They create a market that doesn't already exist, and then they excel at it. So let's summarize. Settlers, prospectors, and outlaws, they each employ their own tactics for adapting to the future of work. The problem is, these big three aren't going to be competitive in the new market because they take a narrow approach with limited impact. As a settler, learning new skills to stay on top of your industry won't always work if your industry collapses. Note the example of brick and mortar retail, which is shrinking at a rapid pace. As a prospector, embracing a freelance career won't work if what you need is professional stability, benefits, and a steady paycheck. Note the current situation of Uber drivers who don't have labor rights or wage protection because they're classified as contractors rather than employees. As an outlaw, innovating sometimes pays off, but it entails a lot of risk and frequently fails. Note here the example of Theranos, a company with a big ambition to develop a game-changing technology to test blood samples. In the end, they couldn't deliver. And so with that context, I disclose to you today, the key to truly thriving in the future of work is to become a pioneer. Pioneers, as you know, are the first to establish themselves in a locale before others arrive. In the old Wild West, pioneers left the security of established communities back east, and they went out to find new land. Here they could exercise their initiative to create a new life in uncharted territories. Pioneers combine each of the three approaches to craft a professional advancement strategy that they can withstand any changes coming in the market. Settlers embrace continuous learning to keep skills sharp and to stay fresh in their fields. Prospectors stay flexible to leverage opportunities outside of a traditional employment structure. And outlaws chase new opportunities by following a path that they themselves create. But pioneers draw on all these tactics and combine them with an aggressive awareness of the developments that are coming down the pike. This allows them to be ready before those developments materialize. The strategy positions pioneers to remain relevant, to remain competitive, and to always be at the frontier of work. Netflix is a prime example of a pioneer company. They continually scan the environment for emerging trends and then position themselves ahead of those trends. At its inception, you'll remember the company mailed physical DVDs to your home, and then you mailed them back when done. A few years later, they introduced their online model to capitalize on the growing prevalence of internet streaming. And soon after that, they evolved again, pioneering original content that now has them competing with traditional television networks and movie studios on a global scale. Just imagine how Netflix employees may have approached this task. What were the visionary actions that they took? What skills did they need to accomplish the company's continuous reinvention of the next big thing? Are you taking the same approach in your own career? As Netflix demonstrates, pioneers see what trends are coming, they prepare for them before anyone else, and they win. So with this, my call to action for you is to become a pioneer of your future career. Thank you.